Fight for the things you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. That's a quote by Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Hello dear students, I'm Miss Lindley and this is Plutarch. Welcome to class. Today we're going to begin a new story. We're going to begin reading a retelling from Rosalie Kaufman of the life of a Greek general named Philopœmen. I'm going to put some things on the screen that I hope will be helpful. And now we will begin reading the life of Philopœmen, as retold by Rosalie Kaufman. Philopœmen lost his father when he was so young that someone had to adopt him. It was his good fortune to excite an interest in two philosophers of Megalopolis, the town in Arcadia where he was born, and they educated him so well that a certain Roman called him, quote, the last of the Greeks, end quote, meaning that Greece did not produce one great man after Philopœmen. When he was in command of the Achaean cavalry, a funny incident occurred, which shows how simple his manners must have been, and how plainly he must have dressed. A woman of Megara received a message that the general of the Achaeans was coming to her house to supper on his way through the place. Her husband was not at home, and she was all flurry and excitement to get the meal ready in the short time she had. Presently, a man arrived, whom she took to be one of Philopœmen's servants, and she asked him to assist her in the kitchen. He threw off his cloak and, at her request, began to chop wood. While he was thus engaged, the husband returned. "What is the meaning of this, Philopœmen?" he asked, in surprise. "I am paying the penalty of my plain looks," answered the general. He was not at all ugly, and he was large and strong, but he was unassuming and had a contempt for any display of riches. From his childhood, Philopœmen had a taste for a soldier's life, and learned to manage horses and handle weapons at a very early age. He would not engage in wrestling, because that sort of training was different from that of a soldier, which he greatly preferred. As soon as he had got through with masters and governors, he joined the citizens of Megalopolis in those private excursions to Laconia, which were made for the sake of plunder, and he was always the first to march out and the last to return. His leisure he spent in hunting or in tilling the ground, for he owned a fine estate about a mile from the city, to which he went every evening. There he would throw himself on a common mattress and sleep no more luxuriously than laborers did. Early in the morning he arose and worked in the vineyard or at the plow until it was time to go to town and take part with his friends in public affairs. He believed that the surest way not to touch the property of others was to take care of one's own, and for that reason he gave so much attention to the improvements of his farm. He spent many hours in the study of oratory and philosophy, but he was too apt to consider those who did not understand the tactics of war as drones useless to the commonwealth. He was 30 years of age when Cleomenes, king of the Lacedaemonians, surprised Megalopolis by night, forced the gates, entered, and took possession of the marketplace. When the alarm sounded, Philopœmen was one of the first to come out, but although he fought with desperate courage, he could not drive the enemy off. But he kept Cleomenes engaged until all the citizens had escaped, and then, although he had lost his horse and received several wounds, he managed to make good his retreat. The Megalopolitans went to Messene, and a short time after Cleomenes offered them their city back with all their property. They would gladly have accepted had it not been for Philopœmen, who said to them, "Cleomenes does not want to return your city to you. What he means to do is to get you back, and then, by becoming your ruler, keep the place more secure. He has no desire to watch empty houses and walls, and if he failed to return, he will be forced to leave. The Megalopolitans saw the wisdom of this argument, and resolved not to return to their city. This gave Cleomenes an excuse for plundering and destroying the greater part of it. King Antigonus then offered to assist the Achaeans against Cleomenes, and joining his army to theirs, marched towards the enemy. In the battle which immediately took place, Philopœmen was wounded in both thighs, and a javelin that passed all the way through his body came out at his back, so that he could neither move nor get anybody to pull it out. Using all his strength, he broke it off, and then rode into the thickest of the fight, urging his men on with a desperation that ended in complete victory. It so happened that this glorious charge was made contrary to orders, and before Antigonus had given a signal which it had been agreed that the Achaeans should obey. After the victory, he asked why the cavalry had charged without orders, and before he had given the signal. The answer was, "We were obliged against our will to go into action because a young man of Megalopolis began the attack too soon." That young man has performed the office of an experienced general, replied Antigonus with a smile. Philopœmen's reputation was made, and Antigonus offered him an important command if he would join his army, but he declined. The young man then went to Crete, where he spent some years and gained much experience in war. And that's all we have for today. Let's end with our closing words. The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled. I look forward to our next lesson. Thanks.